Hey guys, Scott here. Sorry for the lack of videos somewhat recently. There's no real reason for it. There's just not been much to talk about. DBD has been relatively drama-free. There's been no, severe balancing issues. Most of the major things have been fixed. In fact, they just added Wesker back in today. They fixed the scout bug in 2v8. Fast track was nerfed. It seems like most of the hugely problematic things in the game are just sort of not really an issue right now, which is probably good for the game overall, but for me, in terms of talking about stuff, is not super great. But then I saw this post on Twitter about the new killer, the Grimoire killer that basically the community is designing, and all this stuff looks pretty cool. I'm still sort of hesitant from what I've seen from the original consultant gameplay about the actual power and stuff like that, but overall, it's still very early on, and I'm sure the gameplay of the killer will change, so I'm not even going to really comment on that. But what we do have are the perks that the chapter is going to ship with, and I want to review those perks today because some of them, someone was smoking some crack or something like that when they made them. They are absolutely crazy on one way or the other, and some are just completely fine. So, let's just get right into it. So the first one is Lay Waste, a perk that increases regression on near complete generators. This one I think is pretty safe. So whenever you damage a generator, for each charge it had, it regresses 1% faster. That means if you kick a generator that's 1% off of completing, it'll regress 89% faster because 90 charges is a full generator. So the most you could ever possibly get for a perfectly 99 generator is 89% regression, which is a lot. That is, almost doubling the amount of regression. Until you think about perks like, Call of Brine used to be the exact same thing. It used to be 100% faster, or it was 200% of the total, so 100% faster. And that had no requirement. You just kick the generator. So that Call of Brine was just infinitely better than this perk. Now, to be fair, Call of Brine Eruption Overcharge is commonly cited as one of the strongest killer metas in existence, and it was insanely strong when you combined all those things together. But just this perk by itself is not particularly amazing. Now, in theory, you could combine this with Call of Brine to get, above the old Call of Brine's value, but that's in a very perfect scenario where the generator is just about to pop, and realistically, you're probably looking more like something like 40 to 60% additional regression whenever you kick the generator, and this is the regression speed. It's not like Pop Goes the Weasel, where it, just loses a bunch of progress immediately. It means the rate at which it slowly regresses is increased exactly like Call of Brine. So this is basically just a weaker Call of Brine, but Call of Brine was insanely broken when it was that 200% value. So this seems like a nice in-between there. I'm not sure how good this would be because, again, it's very, very reliant on you getting to kick a generator that's, like, nearing completion. But at the same time, you could argue, well, no, you can't even argue that anymore. I was going to say, you could argue Pop Goes the Weasels like that too, but now since it's based on total progress, you can't really. So anytime it's based off of current progress, it tends to not be as good. So this is not a useless effect or anything, and honestly, some numbers could be tweaked to make this better. So I think this, in theory, can be an okay perk if they tweak some numbers. Next, we have Under Your Thumb. The first time a survivor gains haste, a dull totem ignites. Survivors cannot gain more than 25% haste at a time. This is just a basically like Scooby-Doo take the hood off. This is just an anti-exhaustion perk because there's not really any way in DBD for a survivor to gain over 25% haste without an exhaustion perk. I'm trying to think of, like, you're unhooked, you have 10%, you have babysitter, that's another 10%, and then you're running Dark Theory for 3%, and then you have hope and it's end game. Then you'd have like 28% haste or something like that for a few seconds. So, there's such niche scenarios to where it basically doesn't matter. This is just an anti-exhaustion perk. And as an anti-exhaustion perk, it's pretty good. It basically halves the effectiveness of exhaustion perks. So instead of getting, 50% haste from sprint burst, balanced landing, lithe, or, any exhaustion perk that usually gives that standard 50% haste, they can only gain 25% haste. So that's going to have the amount of distance that they get, which is actually pretty good. Now, it is tied to being a hex perk, which is not that great, but on killers that don't have any mobility, I can legitimately see this perk actually being somewhat decent, because one of the major things that separates, good mobility killers with everyone else is their ability to deal with exhaustion perks. If somebody's sprint burst against a blight or something, okay, I don't fucking care. It'll catch back up in 1 second. But if you sprint burst against a peg or, basically half the killer roster, it's a nightmare. So that'll basically equalize weaker and stronger killers, and I can see that being somewhat effective. They might tweak the numbers a bit more, but I think the concept of the perk is there. It will do something. That's the best thing I can say. It will definitely do something. Whether it's worth running or not, I'm not sure, but it will be useful in some way. The next is Vigilance. This is basically like a reverse object of obsession. Every 30 seconds, if the obsession is at least 32 meters away from you, you see their aura for 5 seconds. So the only thing that's going to determine whether or not this perk is abysmal dog shit or actually pretty decent is if that 30-second triggers no matter what, or the 30 seconds triggers when the conditions are met for the perk. What I mean by that is, if you are at 29 seconds and it's about to be used again, if you're 30 meters away, which means you're inside the radius, which means it's not going to be active, does it trigger the cooldown and waste it? Or does it wait for you to actually benefit from the aura reading and then it goes on cooldown? If that's the case, then this perk is pretty good. It's sort of just like, Phantom Fear, just sort of one of those perks that just gives you value intermittently, kind of no matter what. And all those perks can be good for just starting another chase or getting a good idea of where other people are. It is based on the timer, so it could not be super, convenient, but still, that general gradual information just over the course of the match, that's why Phantom Fear is a good perk. It just gives you information at times when you might really need it, when nothing else is happening. It's not based on, getting a hook or something like that. Sometimes that can be very, very useful. Now we have the Survivor perks. The first one, oh boy, Steadfast. This is a boon perk. Survivors repairing the closest generator within the boon's range. Whenever they succeeded a basic grade skill check, the generator gains 1% permanent progress. Pretty good. They repair that generator 50% slower. Abysmal dog shit. This is literally, I think, the worst perk they have. I mean, it's not in the game, so I can't say they've designed it. It's the worst perk that they've tentatively designed in the entire game. Not necessarily even for it being weak, because technically, with a really, really good squad of survivors with some commodious toolboxes, this is probably actually busted as all shit. Because if you get a commodious, you'll get, 12, 13 skill checks. You're basically giga BNPing every generator within, the 20-second window of that. So the fact that you repair, 50% slower for that 20-second window doesn't matter, because you've taken, 30 charges off the generator permanently just for having the boon there. So when used by a coordinated group, it actually could be pretty good. And when used in solo queue, it is actively sandbagging your team. That's why I said it's like the worst design ever. Not because its potential is terrible, because its potential is actually pretty good. The potential is terrible because 99% of the time, you're just going to use this and it's just going to fucking cuck a teammate who can't hit great skill checks, and you're just doing gens slower now. I cannot think of a worse design that only benefits very good Survive with Friends and doesn't do anything for solo queue. The complete opposite of how perks should be designed. So I don't even want to dignify this with a further conversation. It's incredibly terrible. You could literally take off this entire bottom line and it would probably still be fine. So overall, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking here. This is not even like a numbers thing to fix. Like, they need to like chop off entire portions of this description. I get permanent gem progress is very, very good. And the thing is, it's still very RNG reliant. If you don't have a toolbox, you'll probably get like, 5 or 6 skill checks over the course of an entire generator. So you're gaining, really not that much. It just doesn't seem worth it. So this whole thing needs to be changed. It's fucking terrible. Salvation's Cry. Whenever the killer starts chasing you for 10 seconds, other survivors see your aura, see the killer's aura. This is not bad. Any aura reading perk like this is really good for solo queue, because it basically lets you know what the killer is. I mean, you can see it in the tab menu now, but what the killer is, where they are, and the general direction of where they're taking the chase. So if you're working on a generator and you see the survivor starting to run towards you, you can very effectively get out of the way instead of being in a really bad clusterfuck scenario where you need to loop, but the survivor needs the same window you do, and now you're both in a bad spot, and then you both go down, or the killer downs you and then slugs the other guy or something like that. So this basically is really good for solo queue, preventing the killer from snowballing, which can happen very easily due to not knowing exactly where the killer is. Overall, information like that is never really bad. Finally, we have Fruits of Your Labor. Whenever a generator is completed, gain 1 token. Then for each token, you gain 5% haste for 2 seconds. And you gain 20% healing progress. So notably, it says healing progress, not healing speed, which means, a chunk of your bar will be filled. So technically, if there are 3 gens done, you will gain 60% of your heal. And technically, when the last generator is completed, this will trigger a pseudo adrenaline effect where it'll actually completely heal you, even if you have 0% heal progress. So that's an interesting little side effect. It also gives you haste as well. So this is basically a perk designed for people that want to finish gens in killers' faces. If you want to be really aggressive with that, you can, do the generator, it's about to pop, and then if the killer doesn't realize that they can just kick the generator, which, I mean, I would say most killers still don't realize that, then you can pop it in the killer's face, and if there's like 3 gens done, you gain, 50% haste for 2 seconds, which will get you a pretty decent head start on getting to a different tile. This is just sort of like a weird, gradual adrenaline. It's the best way to look at it. I mean, really, when you think about it, adrenaline's going to give you that 50% for 3 seconds, and this is going to give you 5 times, so 25% haste for 2 seconds, and also healing progress, but it has effects throughout the entire match. So I could see a scenario where you're running out of a med kit and you can only heal yourself for, 30%, but then the 4th gen pops and you're fully healed again. And then the 5th gen pops after you get injured and you're fully healed again. So it's sort of like a more gradual, consistent adrenaline with a less powerful effect, which is a pretty interesting way to look at it. And honestly, I think this is pretty well balanced. I don't think they need to change the numbers on this at all. I think it does kind of exactly what it needs to do. And in fact, you can even tactically use med kits less based on UI knowledge and seeing that a gen's about to pop, thinking, okay, that's about to pop. I don't need to heal myself to 100. I can go to 60 and I'll fully heal. So I actually think this perk's pretty good. I think when used smartly by a good player, this can give you some pretty great value. So yeah, definitely a hugely mixed bag. Again, need to make it clear, these are still in the design phase. So this is not what we're going to get. But overall, I think the killer has potential to be interesting. But from what I've seen with the little Ray of Judgment like drawing thing, it seems like one of those anti-loop abilities that's going to be basically entirely up to the killer. But we'll see how it goes. It's still too early to comment on the power. I just wanted to go over the perks because it was a funny dialogue. And still, I have to go, what the fuck was this?